some direction. Give me some direction. Able minds are working, open hearts are learning. Give me some direction.
Hi, my name is Nathan James Navarrete, and I help unconventional evolutionaries have more self-awareness, aligning with their unique self so they're more satisfied in their life. A few of my core values are dignity, civil disobedience, self-inquiry, and empathy. In a few ways on how I do what I do to bring my why to life is constantly learning about the body-mind complex in physics, creating and observing what is, communicating with and listening to the body, acceptance, collaboration, and exploration. And today I have my friend Joan here with us, and she is going to be sharing her experiences in 4 remote sessions that we did together. Welcome, Joan.
I'm Joan. I'm 37, and for the last 17 years I've been working as a hairdresser, and then I started studying yoga around the same time, and I've been a yoga teacher for the last 10 years.
Would you be open to share what some of your core values are?
Both industries that I am a part of, I work with connecting with people through their own inner beauty, in be it physical form or how they move their body. Learning to move inside and be inside themselves is like a very important thing that I'm learning to do, and then I'm also helping facilitate with my clients. So self-expression and then creativity both kind of fall under that umbrella as well.
What are some of your current interests in life?
I've started my own 2 businesses, starting my own salon and my own yoga studio. So within that, I'm learning a lot about business. It's helping me recognize my own inner creative spirit and the fact that I can truly have what I want in this world, and that my life can look how I would prefer it to look and feel, which is really exciting for me right now. I love to read. I'm really trying to get back into other forms of creative self-expression too, of dance. Learning how to tap into my human body and my emotional state is not something that comes very easily to me. And this has been a really fascinating way to learn about myself and then learn about my clients and how they work, and then the humans that I interact with in the world. You know, how can I come from a place of connection?
Is there a worldview that you currently believe to be true?
I truly believe that the world is a benign place to live, that it's a non-harmful, it's neutral. Like the phenomena that arise in our world is there for me to digest and to put into play in the ways that it needs to be put into play. But that doesn't mean that it's harmful in any way.
Is there a worldview that you currently believe to be false?
Yeah, that the world is scary. I don't think it has to be scary anymore.
Would you be open to share what happened in your past that led you up to this point?
Yeah, the first 30 years of my life were pretty traumatic. I've suffered a lot of abuse as a child, and then into my adult years, I probably have lost about 17 people to suicide or drug overdose, or some combination of the whatever the 2 might look like. And I really started to believe that I was a part of the problem there, you know, that if people got too close to me, they would die. And that's been really challenging for me to transform. But I've been, you know, kind of driven to understand what that is about and why that might be, you know, which is helpful. Because of my genetics and my home life growing up, I think I was born with a predisposition to alcoholism. I find it fruitless.
What are you currently interested in because of what happened in the past?
I love connecting with other people that have experienced trauma and that are trying to transform it. I'm interested in all areas of self-growth and self-care. I have to be really, really careful about who I surround myself with.
Was there anything keeping you up at night with your eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling right before we did our first remote session?
I was really unhappy in the relationship that I was in, and I was really unhappy in my career insofar as the locations that I was working, the hours that I was working, things like that. I wasn't too terribly far off track, but a lot of rumination was happening in the middle of the night without really getting anywhere, no concrete answers that I could give myself. And I felt super stuck. Not a lot of conclusions were being drawn at that time, and I knew it. So just knowing that I was stuck in the mind, but not able to facilitate my own way out of it.
Would you be open to share any fears that you had around that time?
One of the biggest things that I've come to realize about myself is that I have a really hard time being honest because I'm so afraid of making other people upset with me, which comes from my childhood conditioning for sure. I've developed this really great codependency mechanism, to help me. Help is in air quotes there, play it safe in a lot of ways. So there's this fear of the unknown, or taking giant leaps into the future without knowing that I'm going to land safely has been really challenging for me to do in my life. The not knowing of how I'm going to get from point A to point B has been really challenging too. The fear of disrupting anything in someone else's life has really kept hold of me, because I've had a hard time setting boundaries with myself or people in the past. It's kept me locked into fear patterns of the unknown.
Were you angry at anything specifically during that time?
I was experiencing some anger towards my partner. I was experiencing some anger toward a couple of different people that I was working with in two different areas, and unable to speak about it or communicate about it in a fruitful way. I've just realized recently too that when I was in my early 20s, I had a partner that experienced suicide, and I've done a very good job of stuffing a lot of those feelings down. And I've realized that I still have a lot of anger surrounding that whole scenario. It's really challenging for me to feel. I've always been angry at systems, governments that don't work anymore, religions that don't work anymore. I grew up in religious schools, Episcopalian and Catholic, and it was always really easy for me to see where the disharmony was coming from. One, was never able to communicate about it very effectively, and two, at that age, no one really wanted to hear from me. It's been challenging for me as a person that can see when systems are in error, to know that it's only my time to speak about it now when I'm asked. And that's helped with the anger quite a bit, that it's one thing to notice or know a thing, but it's another to be asked your opinion or your thoughts on the subject matter. Therein lies a lot of harmony when you can connect the two in a way that is beneficial for everybody.
Are you open to share what some of the trends were that were continuing to reoccur in your personal life?
My codependency has really kind of led me into lack of boundaries. And then those lack of boundaries keep me in this weird holding pattern until I explode in anger. I keep everything really bottled up so that you'll like me and I feel welcome in your environment until I can't handle the pressure anymore. And it feels a lot like in nonviolent communication, they talk about it as the jackal speak. And I've realized that I'm really good at that. I'm really good at playing it safe until I can't anymore. And so for the future, I'm looking to find obviously some kind of balance where I can speak my truth as soon as it arises, as opposed to feeling bottled the way that I have in the past.
Do you feel comfortable sharing some of the trends that were continuing to occur in your career?
I've taken on several jobs that were non-paying with a verbal contract. I've yet to get those jobs in writing, and then they end up kind of backfiring in some weird way. So that's been a pattern for sure that I've recognized that. And again, that's just a lack of boundaries on my end. Job details not clearly stated. And then I become really resentful when maybe the boundaries get pushed in a way that had I had a contract, I might have handled things differently. And part of that is a lack of value on my own end. So I'm starting to learn that that's okay for me to ask for those things. I've noticed the trend too, that I talk to the wrong people about my problems, as opposed to going to the person that could actually satisfy and potentially change the issue. I end up doing this weird, kind of lateral side move where I complain to the people that can't do anything about it, and therein probably produce a little bit more drama and confusion than is necessary.
Was it costing you anything to stay where you were at?
My physical health has definitely taken a toll. I've experienced exhaustion and burnout several times. I probably have been in some weird prolonged state of it forever, but several times it's peaked in my life. And I was coming to a point this year of it peaking again, dealing with kind of chronic things that weren't manifesting as like one horrible issue, but several small ones that when I started doing body talk sessions, they really came to the top of the pile pretty quickly. I realized too that I've given myself absolutely no time for fun in my life. And in fact, when I ask myself questions like, what would you do if you could just go have fun? What would that look like to you? If there's no time for fun, then there's definitely no time for spontaneity.
Did you have a specific desired outcome?
I've been looking for more peace in my life, a better understanding of who I am, able to tap into my emotional state in a more transformative way.
Were you doing other things to address those challenges?
At any given time, I have 5 books on my coffee table that are in the self-help genre.
Were there any other service providers that were offering to help you bridge you to your desired outcome?
I've been seeing a therapist off and on now for about 4 years that I really connect well with. I've been seeing Dr. Gary Cohn here in Oklahoma City for the past 4 years now. And I can truly tell you that I wouldn't be even sitting here able to do this communication had I not found him. I would not be the person that I am today had I not started working with him first. I'm very grateful.
Did he clearly communicate how to bridge you to your desired outcome?
One of the things that stands out the most to me is this phrase that he says quite often of like, feelings are not good or bad, right or wrong. They're just information about the quality of the thoughts that you think. When I can become the observer of my human body and how it's working and what it's thinking and feeling, this has been so helpful because it does just kind of negate all the bullshit that my mind will try to come up with. How am I feeling? Is it good or bad? Like just labeling it in that 2 ways has been so helpful. And then if it's bad, then obviously the quality of my thoughts are not so great right now, and if it's good, then the quality of my thoughts must be, on a more higher level track. It's like a shut-off valve that I've never had access to before. When I can get there, which is more often than not now, which is great. And compared to 4 years ago, huge. If I go too far off track and it starts to feel really shitty, I can get back and recenter myself really easily just by asking myself that one question, how do you feel? Good or bad? Okay, well now, in direct correlation to that, what are the quality of my thoughts? He uses biofeedback technology on a quantum level, which I think is incredibly helpful, specifically the spooky 2. He uses muscle testing. He was the first person to ever introduce me to tapping as a way to, help create different state changes within my human body. He also uses gem and mineral essences as well.
Are you open to share some of the needs of yours that were met from that work?
First and foremost, he created an environment for me to thrive in and a place of safety that I had never really found before. When I first met him, I was stuck in this loop of anger with my mother and not able to get past it. And so I first went in and saw him with my mom. And that was where he introduced me to the fact that he offered, 21-day outpatient rehab program. From that one session with him and my mother, it transformed all the anger that I had towards her. And I knew that I was playing this victim of my life that I didn't want to play anymore. I was really tired of exhausting that role of like the victim of my life. He helped me thrive in a way that I have not been able to ever before, accept myself in a way that I haven't been able to before, to find someone that I can trust, that's supportive and offers a safe place for me to go. An actual physical place was really beneficial too. He's helped me to find balance and cooperation and working with someone else. He's incredibly generous with his resources also, which is super helpful. And so through that, like my self-esteem has grown and I feel more transparent about who I am in this world in a way that I was probably pretty hidden before.
Are you open to share how we connected?
I started following hashtags. I didn't even really fully understand how hashtags could help me until they did, which is great. I guess shining star of social media. But yeah, I stumbled upon Nathan on Instagram and his posts. He posted about digestion and asked if anyone was open to learning more about it. And I said yes. And we connected on that level. And then I quickly started just following his page because I realized like his content was deep. It was obviously done well intentioned, not necessarily for the gain of just followers per se, even though I'm sure that's very helpful for Nathan. I think that you can tell that his heart lies in the content as well that he's producing. That was very evident to me from the very beginning. Over the phone, I just booked that first and we moved on from there.
Were there specific things that motivated you to show up and book a day and time for your first remote session?
I happened to just get on Nathan's website and start reading the literally kind of everything about Nathan that he had to put, which his level of transparency was very helpful to me. The more I read about body talk, and probably because of the other work that I'd already done with Gary Cohn, I was very open to the idea. It didn't seem too out there. I was sold immediately, was into it.
Was there specific things that I said or did where you felt comfortable moving forward?
Nathan's patience is very strong, valuable part of what he has to offer. And I think for anyone that is struggling with vulnerability, having people be patient with them is really, really helpful. One of the first things that I learned about with him, and this was just a regular phone call. I mean, the first time that I was told, like, it's not my fault I was born this way, in a different way than I'd been told before. You hear that in 12-step groups and things like that, and you can understand it to a certain degree, was incredibly transformative. And that's where when I stated earlier about how important it is for me to be very careful about who I surround myself with.
Did you have any specific kinds of thoughts go through your head right before you decided to choose the day and the time to book your first session?
I just knew that I couldn't afford not to do it. If ever I get caught up about money scarcity issues, I have to kind of like use that phrase to help me move forward, because it's super easy to talk yourself out of doing something beneficial for you, like, oh, it comes with a price tag. It's the number one thing I hear from any of my own students as well. And I understand it. I get it, where that mindset comes from, but it's really important work to be done. There's actually nothing more important probably than the gift that you give yourself of self-exploration.
Did you notice anything specific before your first session?
You provided the links that I needed to make it really straightforward. I was super excited overall about the session itself, just because I've known that I needed work in these areas, because it was right in the middle of a transition in my work and my home life.
Would you be open to share what you were noticing during your first session?
I mean, the most profound physical thing was that in this very first session, my arms really went totally numb, which in some weird way was exciting to me because I felt like, oh, it's working. I read that it could happen, physical sensation could happen through your website, not in any kind of body work that I've ever done before. But yeah, some of the things that came up during that first session were that, my shadow work hasn't been taken very far in my life, that I've been too invested in being right, and that not nearly as much awakening as I would like to admit is happening in my relationships. I was more concerned about being in the relationship than I was about being in the correct relationship. Another thing that came up was that I seek power as a way to love myself. This issue itself has come up for me several times in my life. I think I definitely have grown up with kind of a more yang or masculine way of identifying in the world, which is challenging for me. I wasn't really taught how to love myself as a child, has worked its way forward in my life, and is something that I'm, trying to do for myself now. It was impactful because I knew that they were true. Something else that came up, I think it was in this session, was the fact that I have worshipped work more than I've worshipped my ancestors. And when that came up, it was really, my immediate reaction was like to reject it, but then realizing like, oh, that's very true. I have worshipped work in that way and really disconnected myself from my family.
What are some of the things that you noticed after your first session?
Yeah, most noticeably right off the bat, my ears were on fire. They were super hot and ringing. I ended up leaving work early that day because of my ears. And then over the period of the next 2 to 3 days, I had some microbes that needed balancing kind of come up. My immune system was definitely overwhelmed, and maybe the session itself activated my immune system. I also noticed that I was less reactive to stress. It was around this time that Nathan first started sending me the NVC, the nonviolent communication workshop videos. And because I had this downtime, I was able to spend some quality hours, researching this for the first time in my life. So that was cool.
What motivated you to want to experience a second session with me?
Some of it was just plain curiosity to see where it would go. I felt like I received a lot of really valuable information from the first session, which just innately led me right into a second session. It was not even a question of like if I would, I knew I would.
Were there things that you were noticing before your second session?
I still had some trepidation about the location. I just didn't have a place in my life at that point still that I could have security and knowing that I would absolutely not be interrupted. I did see a rainbow outside that morning, which I felt like it was a really good sign that I was on some path of productivity and wholeness.
Are you comfortable sharing some of the things you noticed during the second session?
When the body comes up with the priority, it's interesting because it doesn't always move into areas that the mind is the most comfortable. So some of the things that came up during the second session, I wasn't in the moment able to understand my own autonomy and my own choicefulness, but later being able to digest it and talk through it with Nathan was incredibly helpful to know that I do have, when uncomfortable moments arise, I can make choices for myself that will be beneficial in those moments.
What did you notice after the second session?
There were a couple things that came into play there, but I had just watched those NVC videos. And then I think with the level of calm and being in a less reactive state, I was able to use my words in a better way, especially in still living with my partner at that time, which was helpful. I did have a sense of calm for several hours after the session. I do notice my authority and I'm working with it better and better all the time, but it was very noticeable after the second session that I have more access to what that looks like for me, a little bit better at boundaries. I have a lot of energy to give, but if I give it to the wrong things, then I can be still prone to exhaustion and overload. If I'm not honoring myself and my authority, I have probably been saying yes to a lot of no's for a really long time in my life. And it's a hard process to extract yourself from. But my God, there's nothing more valuable as far as learning who I am and how I am and how I operate in this world.
What motivated you to book a third session with me?
And I know that there's always more layers to uncover. After the second session, I knew I would be ready for a third and a fourth, and I'll be ready for more down the road too.
Were there specific things that you noticed before your third session?
I was just really excited for it. At this point, in my heart of hearts, I know that this is working in the ways that it's supposed to, and that innately I'm on the right path by doing this session work with you.
What did you notice during your third session?
Yeah, this session brought up quite a few things that I've been really trying to repress. So in a lot of ways, it was agonizing as I say that with a smile on my face. I have a lot of grief that I have not known where to place or how to do it, how to do grief. I have felt a lot of shame, I think, in my life and a lot of guilt that I wasn't stronger for some of the people that I've lost in my life. Some of the things that came up as priorities came up in my lungs of balancing the emotion of grief. This part about premature death has definitely got me thinking well past the end of that session, that I've turned away from whole portions of my life because I couldn't handle it. And it felt just like too much to try to integrate it. So I think through this third session, in some way, I was being, through all of this work, I'm being called to some level of bravery that I don't know exists inside of me, but I hope it does.
What did you notice after your third session?
I had a lot of anxiety right after this session. I did cry off and on most of the day. I really tried to stuff it as best I could. And I definitely saw my mind wanting to react in the ways that it likes to react by telling myself I can't handle it. And, I should just numb it. I should act out in the ways that I prefer to act out, the ways that are comfortable for me. This was the first time that I was able to notice it and watch myself walk through it without acting out. That day in particular, I was able to resist and I was able to see myself walk through it.
What motivated you to book a fourth session?
I know it's working. I can see, I innately know that the value of this. I can't do it alone. I can't do this work by myself as much as I've tried to. The amount of self-study that I've done is wonderful, but it's limiting in the ways that I am limited by my human condition. And so I need help. And I fully recognize that now. No matter how hard it is, no matter how painful it is sometimes, like I have to keep moving forward on this journey to get where I want to go.
Were there specific things that you were noticing before your fourth session?
I've been sleeping a little bit better. I definitely was calmer as a general state. At this point, my partner had fully moved out of the home. And so I did finally have a safe space to be in and be myself. But at the same time, that left an emptiness that I had to acknowledge also. My routines have changed. Super excited about some other plans I had put into motion, like building my own salon, which in itself a distraction that was pleasurable. Like, this is a part of who I am and I have to integrate it. It doesn't make it good or bad, it just is. Has been really a relief. How do I live in integrity in the light, and how do I balance the judgment part in the darkness? And for that to come up in this session was beneficial for me. And I knew it to be true immediately as soon as it came up. So it definitely came up that I need to balance in integrity, which makes sense to me. And I think it's part of the mental war that I have been waging over my lifetime.
Would you be open to share some of the things that you were noticing during your fourth session?
Well, one of the first priorities that came up during the session was around one of the antidepressants that I've been taking. And within that came up past partner that experienced suicide while we were together. And around that memory specifically, I had no idea how much anger and anxiety I still had. And it shocked me a little bit to feel the amount of actual rage that was inside of my body.
What were you recognizing after your fourth session?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty intense detox period right afterwards. I had some pretty intense abdominal pressure. The thing that kept coming up in the session itself was the spleen.
Was there specific things that you noticed that were unique in contrast to systems or modalities that you experienced in the past?
The body talk sessions were able to access more areas. More ground was covered in one single session than any other kind of session work that I've ever done before. There were more areas available to healing in one session.
Are you open to share some of the things that really mattered to you about the service and connecting with one another?
Learning how to operate in my human vehicle have meant the most, and that often these are markers for me as to what is important and what I need to be paying attention to, and often what the truth is, that there's truth in whatever it is I'm listening to, hearing, or speaking about. When one of those two markers come up for me, I know that I really need to be paying attention in those times, which is huge.
Could you please share some of the needs that were met for you in these sessions together?
The most meaningful part of all of it to me is making meaning of past experiences and some kind of life serving way, so that everything finds a place in my mind and in my body. That, working with you has, you provide a level of acceptance that I've really not ever found before. Communicating with Nathan is remarkably easy for me. That's saying a lot. My needs for sleep and rest are starting to heal and become a little bit more normalized in their patterning, which is wonderful. My needs for emotional safety and trust, which are huge, are being met. Discovery in and of itself, empathizing in a new kind of way, finding patience for myself and others in a new way, that there's a place for humor. I think it's really important to be able to find the humor in it. When you feel safe and in a place that you know that you're going to be accepted, and that there is a powerful level to the communication that's taking place, then that humor comes easier.
Would you be open to share your view of how body talk is effective in contrast to just reading or listening to audio about astrology?
Body talk helps me get into my unconscious. Astrology can teach me quite a bit about myself, but there's parts that I can't access in my unconscious mind. I can read about it all day long, but if I don't know how to get to those hidden places, which body talk can do for you, then there's only so far, that self-knowledge can avail you.
Are there specific types of people that you sense the service would help?
Besides everyone in the whole world, people that have experienced trauma, because we often repress so much of it that it becomes this kind of unconscious load that we don't even realize is there still, or we think we've processed quite a bit of it. And there's all sorts of different traumas in this life that we can be exposed to. And I know that I've only seen a tiny part of it. I know that other people in the world have experienced much more than I have. So for anyone that's experienced trauma in any way, shape, or form, I think that this is going to be incredibly helpful. There's all those unconscious patterns. There's memories, when those memories get trapped, the stressor chemicals that were produced in the body at the time of that memory get trapped too. And as much as I love yoga and as much as I love other types of body work, I think it can only go so far. It takes a system like this to really get in there a little bit deeper. If anyone is looking for a change in their life too, I think that this can be really helpful. Like I said before, I was really stuck when I started working with Nathan, and whether my own stuckness came from me or an outside source, I'm not sure, but I knew I needed change, and this body talk sessions really helped facilitate that change in the right direction for me. The tapping is a new kind of tapping, or just a different patterning of tapping than I've ever been exposed to before, but it makes sense to me in a new way, and it has a profound immediate effect. So if I am in a stressed out position, or I find myself there, it's a tool that I can immediately tap into, that all I have to do is kind of separate myself for 5 minutes from whatever environment I'm in, and I can create state changes. So whether I step into the restroom, whether I'm in my car by myself before I go into what I perceive to be a stressful environment, or maybe even just like laying in bed at night trying to get the mind to quiet down before sleep, those are the times that I tend to use it the most. So those are the times I'm referring to. It's empowering for me in a way that I have this like tool that I know is going to be effective immediately in my toolkit in a way that I maybe haven't used it before or recognized its ability, its innate ability. Yeah, Nathan has given me a couple of different books on body talk, and then also on the grief process, access to any kind of information that he has, and his willingness to share has been really powerful, really enlightening, and really I'm incredibly grateful. Nathan has really helped me discover other areas that I've always wanted to be better, including nonviolent communication, which is not something that is available to me in the area that I live right now. The content that he has provided me over the last few months has been invaluable for me to learn how to communicate more effectively in this world with my friends and family and my clients all together.
Would you like to communicate anything specifically to someone who is feeling frustrated or angry or sad or grief, and they have a need or desire for connection and empathy and support and direction?
The answers are going to come, and they might not come all at once or as fast as you prefer, but they will come. And it does take effort and work on your end to help get you there. And even when I say that, I know how obscure and esoteric that can sound, practice and all is coming, and every day is just another practice. We get to practice every day. Whatever it is that we're doing, it's always going to be a practice no matter what. We have to be patient with ourselves and with the people that surround us.
What do you, Joan, wish to see more of in the world?
I definitely want to see more access to things like body talk, using the human body as a way to get out of the mind and into where the human body wants to take us. I think is going to be the forefront of technology as we move forward. I wish it was a more commonplace conversation that's happening in our world. I wish I didn't have to preface conversations with, I know we're in the Midwest and this might be a little woo woo for you. I have to start a lot of conversations that way. I can't wait until I don't have to say that anymore. That modern medicine includes a lot of these systems, body talk, all of it. That within all of those systems, that it's totally okay to be who you are, that we're all different for a reason. And within that is the beauty of the whole fucking world. I wish that our culture was more updated and we were more forward thinking than we are, that we incorporate our shadow work into our day-to-day conversations. I think would make healing a lot more accessible to a lot of people. I think we still play pretend a lot out in the world, that we're all perfect, moving forward constantly. None of us are stuck ever, and none of us ever behave badly, and everything is someone else's fault, and if we could start to own our own shadow and be able to communicate about it, that also brings that humor that we were talking about earlier in, I think, man, we would grow by leaps and bounds very quickly if humans didn't have to mask who they are because they don't know how to heal yet.
Well, this is a huge gift of celebration. Thank you for creating time to share your view and your experiences with us today, Joan.
You're welcome.
I feel really grateful. Thank you so much, everyone who has contributed support along the way to help evolve the collective.